fired up, so I hope you got it on the air. So from my understanding, yeah. So from my understanding, the vectors will go all the way to Sullivan and Pines, and then they're supposed to come back around, right? Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, good, good. So hang out here for a while.
I know, we're like our neighbors. Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Hanrahan. Tonight we are joining you for a CREM 2 special report after 2 firefighters were killed in an ambush as they went to fight a fire on Canfield Mountain near Coeur today. We are waiting for a news conference with more information set to happen at around 9:30 tonight, just about a half hour from now, and we expect to hear from Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris in that press conference. Well, just within the last hour and continuing right now, we captured this scene, a procession of law enforcement and firefighters. This is the end or the start of that procession right now, escorting the 2 deceased firefighters from Coeur d'Alene to the Spokane County Medical Examiner's office. As you can see right there, several other firefighters from different agencies lined up in a show of respect to their fallen brothers right there. Earlier in the day, we heard from Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris about what happened.
So at approximately 1:21 p.m. this afternoon, we received reports of a fire on the east side of Canfield Mountain. Fire assets responded to the scene, and at approximately 2 p.m. this afternoon, it was reported that firefighters were receiving shots fired at them. We now have 2 deaths. We have an unknown amount of casualties. We still have civilians that are coming off of that mountain. We might have civilians that are stuck or in shock on that mountain. So this is a very, very fresh situation.
Just within the last hour or so, we received more news from the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. They wrote this evening, members of the SWAT team located a deceased male on Canfield Mountain. A firearm was found nearby. Additional information will be provided during the scheduled press briefing. Again, that's taking place at 9:30 tonight. At this time, the shelter in place is being lifted. However, they say this is still an active wildfire on Canfield Mountain. Residents in the area are advised to be prepared and ready should further action be needed to take. Well, this deadly ambush drew a huge law enforcement response from local, even federal authorities. CREM 2's Regan Gallo, we're going to go to our Caitlin Galloway tonight. She is outside of Kootenai Health where that procession began. Caitlin, what can you tell us about that situation?
Yeah, that's right, Mark. Well, it's pretty quiet out here in front of the hospital right now. There's a couple families, maybe members of fire personnel that we saw cars were still parked in the parking lot, but really nothing much happening right here. But this is where that procession left from. Now, earlier, just an hour or so ago, we saw there were fire personnel lined up on a lot of the overpasses here. Exit 11 was one of the main ones where they were lined up. Now, they directed me to the fire station to talk to somebody there, but I did talk with a lot of the community members that showed up to support them. There were people holding American flags, people honking horns as they drove by in support of this line of fire personnel that were lined up on this overpass. And I talked to one woman who told me that she was shocked and heartbroken that this happened in her community. They think that they're so safe here. It feels like such a safe place, and something like this obviously really, really hard on the community. But she also told me she's not surprised by the way that the community showed up in support. There were probably about at least 50 people by the time we were there. And again, all of them just in support of what happened today. They said this is what they expected from their community. It's really important to show that support in this difficult time. In front of Kootenai Health, Caitlin Galloway, CREM 2 News.
Caitlin, before I let you go real quick, we saw some of the video of the procession going along I-90 from Coeur d'Alene to Spokane. Can you give us any idea just on how big that procession was, how many law enforcement and fire personnel were part of it?
You know, on the overpass near Exit 11, where I talked to some of the firefighters and the community members, there were probably close to between 5 or 10 vehicles lined up that pulled away while I was there talking to the community members to join that procession. So at least on that overpass alone, between 5 and 10 fire vehicles that were there.
And thank you very much. We mentioned this situation began at around 1:20 this afternoon. That's when the call for the fire came in. We heard from Sheriff Norris earlier that at around 2 o'clock, that's when the reports of shots fired came in and the firefighters were down. There was this big chunk of time between 2 p.m. and roughly 8 o'clock or so, while they appeared to be searching for a suspect or suspects. The sheriff said he didn't know if more than one person was involved. The firefighters just encountered, and then law enforcement, a large amount of gunfire in rapid succession, as he described it. And he said the person or persons were armed with what he described as sporting rifles, high-powered rifles, is what he said. We're still waiting for clarity on the information in terms of if it's a suspect or suspects. Again, the press release from 8 tonight from Kootenai County just states that members of the SWAT team located a deceased male on Canfield Mountain. A firearm was found nearby, and they say additional information will be provided at 9:30 tonight. That's when that updated press conference is set to take place, assuming with Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris. All right, aside from this whole law enforcement aspect of this, the shooting and then the search for the gunmen, or the gunmen plural, we have a fire burning along Canfield Mountain, and crews were not able to get to that firefighting effort because they had to wait until the area was secured. We want to bring in our chief meteorologist, Jeremy the Goo, right now to talk about kind of where we sit in terms of wildfire. We know it's been really dry, Jeremy. What about the wind? What are firefighters going to have to contend with as they try to put this out?
Well, we are headed into a very hot stretch. Not necessarily a good thing, but the good news about our current weather pattern and the one we are heading into is that it favors very calm winds. You can still see some of that wildfire smoke here burning. And keep in mind, the sun has officially set about 15 minutes ago, and as it continues to get darker, that atmosphere calms. It always gets calmer at night. That's just how this works. The fire itself is right outside of Coeur d'Alene, right in Canfield Butte. You heard Bob Norris say that it's on the eastern edge of it. So with that fire burning, there is a massive expanse of vegetation around there. It's right on the edge of the mountains. It's right on the edge of a much larger area that would have the potential to burn in a wind event or if we get any additional spreading. As we move through the night, I don't think wind is a big factor, but notice all the mountains that you're getting a little bit farther out to the east. To me, that says we will likely see stronger wind gusts at evening or dusk, and then again in the morning. And then as we move through the day, we'll see those temperature differentials caused by daytime heating kick up some of that wind in this area where we see that fire burning. As Mark mentioned, though, it is extremely dry out there. Our latest drought monitor update puts moderate drought in that part of North Idaho. I know we've seen a little bit of rain, but we're trending some 2 inches behind in terms of rainfall year to date. And as we build in this ridge of high pressure, it's really, really good when it comes to having a calm atmosphere. However, it is going to be exceptionally hot and exceptionally high over the course of the next few days. Temperatures are going to stay in the 90s Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and it comes with nothing but sunshine. The saving grace here is that we will not see any sort of significant wind event as we move through these hot, sunny days.
Yeah, thankful for any positive in this situation. Jeremy, thank you very much. Stand by. We'll come back to you later in the broadcast. All right, we want to take a live picture right now of where this press conference is set to get underway. This will be taking place in Coeur d'Alene. You can see the podium right there with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. We are expecting to hear from Sheriff Bob Norris. The last time we heard from him on camera today was roughly 4 o'clock this afternoon. That was just a couple of hours, 3 hours into this very chaotic situation that unfolded just kind of northeast of Coeur d'Alene on Canfield Mountain right there. So we're expecting to learn if they think they've, neutralized the threat as he described it earlier today, if they found the gunmen or gunmen. We're hoping for some clarity on if they now believe just one person was involved or maybe more than one person was involved. We're also hoping to learn more about the number of victims. We do know that 2 firefighters were killed. They were ambushed, shot, and killed, it appears, in this situation. We are hearing another firefighter may have also been injured. We're waiting for clarity on that. Also, earlier in the day, the sheriff mentioned, and Jeremy touched on it, Canfield Mountain it's a huge area where a lot of people go to recreate, especially on a nice Sunday evening in the summer, or Sunday afternoon, rather. So he was not sure if they would even locate maybe even more bystanders or potentially more victims up there. So we're waiting for clarity on that as well. I do believe we have some live pictures of this procession, if we can go to that right now, where the 2 fallen firefighters were taken from Coeur d'Alene down I-90 westbound towards the Spokane County Medical Examiner's office. Here is a shot of some of those first responder vehicles lined up earlier in the evening. We had some live pictures of them coming down I-90. We know several citizens and other fire agencies have come on and even parked along some of the overpasses to show their support as they went by. There's some pictures from I-90 earlier in the evening tonight. This whole situation, this chaotic ambush killing of firefighters, elicited a huge law enforcement response. Essentially every local agency, including from Spokane, rushed to the scene. Federal agents went there as well. The FBI and the ATF posting they were also sending agents that way to be of assistance. And this is just something that is extremely rare. I'm trying to think, in my 20 years, I can't recall a time where firefighters responding to a reported wildfire were ambushed. They were just trying to put it out. They were shot and killed. We want to get back out to our Caitlin Galloway. She has been following the situation. She's live outside of Kootenai Health, where that procession began, to talk about kind of the situation there and what you're seeing from your vantage point. Caitlin?
Hey, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm here in front of Kootenai Health, which is pretty quiet now. There were a couple people still lingering in the parking lot. They've mostly cleared out by this point. We can start to smell the smoke a little bit coming in here at Kootenai Health as it gets a little bit later into the evening. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, this elicited a big law enforcement response, but also a really major response from the community. I spoke with a couple of people who came out in support of some of the firefighters that were out on an overpass before they joined the procession. And they said it's so surprising to think that something like this would happen in their community, a community that they've always thought was safe and welcoming and, very friendly and neighborly. They said these are our neighbors, these people that were just trying to do their jobs, putting their lives on the line every day as first responders. But the woman I talked to also said she's not surprised by the response from her community. There were about 50 people that came out on the overpass near exit 11 on I-90 near Coeur Lane, and they just came out holding American flags. They were shaking hands with the firefighters, giving hugs, saying thank you. And just thanking them for all that they do and really showing their support during a difficult time for this community. Those vehicles eventually left. There were about probably 5 to 10 fire vehicles parked along that overpass over I-90. They joined the procession, but a lot of those community members were still there up to even about 15 to 20 minutes ago, waving the flag, showing support. People were honking their horns in support as they drove by. So obviously a really, really heartbreaking day for this community, but also we've seen the community really come together in support of their first responders as well. Mark, back to you.
Caitlin Galloway live tonight. Caitlin, thank you very much. Just to give you some context on where this all unfolded today or continues to be unfolding, let's bring up now kind of a map of the Canfield Mountain area where these firefighters were ambushed and then the search for the gunmen unfolded, if we have that video right now. Again, as Jeremy mentioned, we're just north. It happened just northeast of Coeur d'Alene earlier today, and that's where all those officers were focused on trying to find the shooter or shooters. This whole situation elicited we heard from people from all over the nation, including some of the highest members of our federal law enforcement. So take a look at what they had to say earlier today.
The deadly ambush of firefighters and the effort to find their killer captured the attention of the nation's top law enforcement officials this evening. Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, took to X, writing, FBI assets are currently on scene providing support. It remains an active and very dangerous scene. Attorney General Pam Bondi also weighed in. Thank you to our incredible FBI agents on the ground assisting local authorities in Idaho, she wrote. We are all praying for you. And ATF's Seattle account posting, special agents and certified fire investigators from the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle offices are responding to the scene in Coeur d'Alene to provide support. Idaho Governor Brad Little calling the ambush a heinous direct assault on our brave firefighters and asking Idahoans pray for them and their families. Senator Mike Crapo took to X to say he is monitoring the horrific events while urging people to follow recommendations of law enforcement. And Senator Jim Risch calling the ambush a villainous attack on the people who dedicate their lives to protecting and serving our communities, saying the attack is despicable and not Idaho.
We understand now. Here is that map to give you some perspective on where this all unfolded. Again, Canfield Mountain is just northeast of Coeur d'Alene right there. It is a popular area for recreators. We're talking side-by-sides, mountain bikers. A lot of hikers are in that area, especially on a Sunday. Jeremy touched on the conditions in that area. It's kind of, obviously, it's a mountainous conditions, and there's plenty of wooded area for someone to conceal themselves. And the sheriff talking about how that added to the challenges of trying to find the person or persons responsible. Want to get back now to a live picture of this procession tonight. As you can see, people still hanging around there to show their respects to the two fallen firefighters who thought they were just responding to a wildfire, a report of a wildfire. Again, this took place. The call came in about 1:20 this afternoon. And then at 2 o'clock, the call came in, the report of shots fired. And two firefighters we know are now dead. They were taken, their bodies were taken via procession from Coeur d'Alene to the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office. Again, aside from this whole law enforcement effort, there is also a wildfire still burning that crews just were not able to fight for multiple hours today while they tried to secure the scene. Want to bring back in our chief meteorologist, Jeremy Legoo, for more perspective on where it's burning, the conditions we're seeing, and the challenges that crews face trying to fight that fire.
Mark, it's just a really interesting area. As you get into Idaho, a lot of people who might be familiar with parts of, say, Washington or even eastern Washington, it's more grass, the woods start to get a little more dense, but by the time you make it into Coeur d'Alene and the mountains around the region, it's just a much more dense forest on much steeper landscape. Those mountains are more intense, they're higher, they're steeper, they have more to offer. You can see some of that smoke still billowing, but when we take a look at the map, now watch when we zoom in, it's right on the edge of some populous areas. That's Hayden, that's Coeur d'Alene, and these are all neighborhoods through here. It butts right up to that steep terrain. You might look at that and think, all right, why aren't those neighborhoods going into there? The reason is it is that steep and that rocky. Not just steep, but rocky and many, many, many big trees. So in that area, many people will go to hike. It's a beautiful hill that you can walk your way. It's a mountain that you can walk your way all the way up to from many different entrances through neighborhoods or coming up along some Forest Service roads or even making your way into an area where people often park and then venture in side-by-sides or dirt bikes or mountain bikes or whatever it may be. It is right on the edge of Coeur d'Alene, so as Mark mentioned a little bit earlier, it is an extremely popular area, especially on the weekends, to get out, get some exercise, and get some fresh air. The vegetation is very thick down low, but as you work your way closer to the top, there are two different summits. There's West Canfield Butte Summit and East Canfield Butte Summit. As you work your way toward the top of the higher of the two, which is the western side, it does become a little more open. There are transmitting towers up near the top, so there are access roads that go up there and do connect into some of these other areas. But around those transmitting towers, there are also multiple cement structures that offer shelter or a block if someone were up that high to get a look over some of those trees. So it's a very interesting and very unique location that this all took place. Along the eastern side of this is a vast wilderness. If we just zoom out a little, you can see this whole area here is just unpopulated. It's mountains, it's untamed, it's steep terrain, it's a lot of vegetation. Thankfully, as we talked about a little bit earlier, we just aren't in a weather pattern that favors any sort of strong winds. Typically, a wind would blow from west to east or southwest to northeast in that area, which is not a good thing. However, we are headed into what is known as one of the calmest weather patterns possible. Reason being, when you get under a ridge of high pressure, everything just becomes stagnant. For that reason, our temperatures are going to climb and climb quite dramatically in the coming days. Today we made it into the mid-80s. Tomorrow we'll be in the 90s. Tuesday even warmer. Wednesday staying every bit as warm thanks to this weather pattern. So while wind is not a factor, what does become a factor is the heat. There are three main things you have to be concerned with in a wildfire. Heat is one, wind is one, and how dry your atmosphere is another. Wind is not a factor. However, heat and a very dry atmosphere are a factor. That allows the fire to grow intensely and rapidly. The wind would be what would spread that wildfire. So if we get rid of that element, that will help crews. However, we are still on the precipice of summer. We just started the season. So up in the mountains, it is still cold. You still get temperature differences as the sun comes up and heats everything. You have nice shady areas in those steep mountain terrain. And when you get those cold spots, that will create localized wind gusts. I was out in those mountains a little bit earlier, and the wind would just pick up from one direction and then a little bit later pick up from another. As the daytime heating went and different areas got hot, that direction will shift, and that will be what crews will be battling in the coming days to get this wildfire under control. Mark?
All right, Jeremy, thank you very much for the perspective on that. I want to go back out to where the press conference is slated to start just in about 9 minutes from now. We're expecting an update from Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris about this situation. The last update we received was just after 8 o'clock tonight. It came in the form of a press release that was emailed to us from the sheriff's office. It said, I'll just read it to you. It said, this evening, members of the SWAT team located a deceased male on Canfield Mountain. A firearm was found nearby. Additional information will be provided during the scheduled press briefing at 9:30 tonight. It said at this time, the shelter in place is being lifted. There was a huge shelter in place order for several hours today. They write that's been lifted. However, there still is an active wildfire on Canfield Mountain. Residents in the area are advised to be prepared, and they should be ready for further action if it needs to be taken. So we're expecting to learn more about that and really get some more clarity on the gunman, or gunman plural, because earlier in the day, the sheriff said he didn't know at the time. He said it could be one person or a couple people doing the shooting. He said, I want to read to you what he said earlier today from my notes because I found it kind of, I guess, telling of the situation. He said, individuals, if not neutralized quickly, this will likely be a multi-day incident, is what he said. That was earlier today at the previous press conference at 4 o'clock. What you're looking at right now is a video of the command center. That's where all the law enforcement agencies and first responders gathered throughout the day as they tried to figure out the best way to go about this situation. Again, it all began just after 1 this afternoon. The shooting was reported at 2 p.m. The last update we received saying they had found a deceased person, that came in at 8 o'clock tonight. So there's a lot of details we're still trying to get filled in about what happened between 2 p.m. the shooting and then roughly 8 o'clock or so tonight. Of course, this elicited a huge response, and news of what happened today has quickly spread across the country and beyond. I can tell you local fire agencies from across the area, they've come out, and even just people, just citizens have come out to line the procession route. That procession went from Coeur d'Alene, from Kootenai Health, west on I-90 to the Spokane County Medical Examiner's office here in Spokane. And that's where we have seen just dozens of law enforcement and firefighting vehicles traveling down I-90 to go to this procession to really just pay their respects to their fallen brothers. Again, 2 firefighters from Kootenai Fire and Rescue just responding to a reported wildfire, ambushed, shot and killed today, this afternoon. We don't know who the gunman was or is. We're still waiting for more information on that. You can see some folks carrying American flags right there as they walk across the scene. Again, that press conference set to get underway in just about 6 minutes from now, expecting to hear from Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris. It was pretty telling today about how serious the situation was because the deputy director of the FBI took to Twitter today, or this afternoon, to say that he's aware of the situation. Agents are responding to help their local authorities. Even the Attorney General of the U.S., Pam Bondi, taking to Twitter today, or X rather, stating that she's being filled in on the situation and that federal officers are en route to help local officers as well. It's a situation that I cannot recall covering in my 20-year career of firefighters being ambushed, shot, and killed. That's what the sheriff mentioned earlier today as well, Sheriff Bob Norris. He said, I've heard of this type of thing happening in urban situations, never in a rural situation like this. So he was clearly a bit taken aback by the events that unfolded today. Again, this is video from the command center from earlier this afternoon. I mentioned a huge law enforcement response, federal officers as well as local law enforcement responding to this scene. We have a little bit of sound, a portion of the press conference from earlier today with Sheriff Bob Norris. Let's take a listen into what he had to say. Again, this is from earlier in the day.
So at approximately 1:21 p.m. this afternoon, we received reports of a fire on the east side of Canfield Mountain. Fire assets responded to the scene, and at approximately 2 p.m. this afternoon, it was reported that firefighters were receiving shots fired at them. We now have 2 deaths. We have an unknown amount of casualties. We still have civilians that are coming off of that mountain. We might have civilians that are stuck or in shock on that mountain. So this is a very, very fresh situation.
Again, that was the sheriff, the Kootenai County Sheriff, earlier in the afternoon at 4 o'clock. That's when that initial press briefing was held. We're hoping to get an update here in just about 3 minutes for more information from the sheriff. If you are just joining us, here's a map of where this all unfolded. You can see Coeur d'Alene down towards the bottom of your screen, Canfield Mountain just northeast of Coeur d'Alene right there. That's where the firefighters responded to earlier this afternoon, a report of a fire. That's where 2 were shot and killed. We don't know why. No information on a potential motive in this situation. But it's drawing a huge response from the law enforcement, first responder community, as well as just citizens that are concerned about what happened. Our Caitlin Galloway is live outside of Kootenai Health right now, once again, to talk about that aspect of it. And Caitlin, just several quote-unquote normal, everyday people have showed up there to pay their respects.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. Kootenai Health is pretty quiet now. There were a couple people still hanging out in the parking lot, but they've since gotten into their cars and headed out from Kootenai Health. Not a lot more information to provide from Kootenai Health specifically, but I did talk to some of the community members who joined a procession of fire vehicles that were waiting on an overpass to be able to join that procession that we mentioned earlier in the show. You mentioned the sheriff feeling really taken aback, and that's also the feeling that I got from the community. This was just they felt like their community was so safe, so neighborly, and I really feel like that was shattered today.
Well, I'm a Coeur d'Alene, Idaho native, so these are our neighbors and our sons and our brothers and our friends. And they put their lives on the line every day for us. And for them to come and try to put out a fire and get shot in Idaho, that doesn't happen up here.
Again, I spoke with that woman as part of just the community that showed up in support of those fire vehicles that were lined up on that bridge. They brought American flags. There were people honking their horns in support. And she went on to say, she's not surprised by the response from her community because this is how she was raised. You show up, you support one another, especially in times of tragedy. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, my goodness. All right, Caitlin, thank you very much. I also want to read a post from the International Association of Firefighters. They posted on their Facebook earlier tonight saying IAFF members were ambushed earlier today in a heinous act of violence in Coeur d'Alene. 2 of our brothers were killed in action while responding to a fire when they were attacked by a sniper who remains at large. This was posted about 3 hours ago. A 3rd brother's in surgery, they write. Please pray for him, our fallen and their families, and for the law enforcement officers who are on the hunt for the suspect. We are just about 90 seconds away from an expected press briefing by Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris. Can we go back out to that shot right there? The podium is set up. There are several members of the media who are waiting. But again, we are waiting to hear from Sheriff Bob Norris about an update tonight about where things stand at this hour. The press release they sent out via email said that they had located a deceased male on Canfield Mountain and a firearm was found nearby. That's all we know. Earlier in the day, the sheriff said he didn't know if there was 1 gunman or maybe 2 or more. He said he didn't know. He said they encountered rapid gunfire up there is how he described it. And he said the person was armed with a high-power rifle up there as well. So it was certainly not a good situation whatsoever. Again, just about 30 seconds away from a planned press conference at the Kootenai County with the sheriff about this deadly ambush of 2 firefighters earlier today, happening on Canfield Mountain, 120. Here is a live look at a procession right now. These are first responders, law enforcement, and firefighters who are escorting the deceased firefighters' bodies from Coeur d'Alene tonight to the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office. We also had some video of that taking place along I-90. Several law enforcement and first responder vehicles traveling westbound on I-90. If we show you some video of the scene, we've been mentioning here is the procession along I-90 of all those law enforcement and first responder vehicles. I've received videos from people I know as well who are standing along overpasses over I-90, waving American flags and just showing their support for their fallen brothers. So a huge community response to this as well. Here's a scene earlier today. This was the command post. Dozens and dozens. We spoke with one man who lives there. He estimated between 60 and 80 law enforcement vehicles rushing to the scene and staging out of that area. We're talking essentially every local law enforcement agency from the area responding to try to get this situation taken care of, to include FBI agents from our local offices. A huge response. On the right-hand side of your screen, left-hand side of your screen, is the podium where we're expecting to hear from Sheriff Bob Norris here momentarily. As soon as he begins talking, we'll take that to you live so we can hear the update. Again, we're waiting to get some clarity on a number of issues to include, was it just one person involved? Is it resolved? Where we stand at this hour? Okay, here we go. There's Bob Norris walking up to the podium, so let's just go ahead and take a listen.
Before we get started. Testing 1, 2, 3, June the 29th, approximately 9:30 p.m., 21:30 hours. Office of Emergency Management. Testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3. Anybody have any issues with the sound, or are we good to go? Good to go. Okay, good evening. It is a sad day in Kootenai County. Very, very sad. Today, we're going to go over the timeline. We're going to introduce everybody that's up here. Chairman of the BOCC is Bruce Matari. We have Lieutenant Jess Stinson from the Idaho State Police. We have Bill DeRuyter from the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. And we have Pete Hawley from the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. And we're going to go through a quick timeline. This is still a very, very fresh investigation, an incident. So many of these facts might change, but they are evolving as we speak. At approximately 1:21 this afternoon, we received a phone call that there was a fire on the backside or east side of Canfield Mountain. Fire assets responded to the scene, and at approximately 2 o'clock, firefighters broadcast that they were being shot at on Canfield Mountain. During that next hour and a half, where we have assets that are responding to the aid of these firefighters, we still have an active fire. We are managing about 17,000 square foot containment area. We are requesting other law enforcement agencies to assist us. We had a great response. We had the Spokane County Sheriff's Office responded in force, the Spokane Police, the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, the FBI, many agencies responded right here in Idaho, Bonner County, Shoshone County, Kellogg. So we had about 300 law enforcement officers that were on scene that were trying to make heads and tails out of what was occurring. And during this time, we exchanged gunfire with the suspect, and we also got information. We received information from the White House, from Kash Patel, the FBI, from Governor Brad Little, and also Raul Labrador, that anything that we needed, that they would absolutely respond. So we had a lot of assets that came into that command post. And then we had a briefing about 6:30, about 18:30 hours at the command post. And in that briefing, we kind of gave an update to the agencies that this is still an active shooter, and that as soon as this individual could be neutralized, that he should be neutralized and the threat should be eliminated as quickly as possible. At approximately 1940 hours, we did have information that let me back up just a second. We had a cell phone activation that was in the same spot since about 3:16. And that it was in the same area, and we honed in on that cell phone, and we saw that there was a male appeared to be deceased with a weapon nearby. So we have currently one dead shooter. Based on the preliminary investigation that was being conducted, keep in mind we had a fire that was rapidly it was approaching the body, so we had to scoop up that body, and we had to transport that body to a different location. But based on the preliminary information, we believe that is the only shooter that was on that mountain at that time. So there is no threat to the community at this time. Based on the trajectory and based on the type of weapons that this individual had that we could recover, we believe only the one shooter. We did lose a Coeur d'Alene firefighter, and we did lose a firefighter from the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. We have another firefighter that just came out of surgery from the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. I'm sorry, from the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department. Right? Is that true? Okay. He just came out of surgery. He is fighting for his life, but he's in stable condition. So we knew that our resources were exhausted. That if this were to prolong into a 24 or 48-hour operation, we would need additional helicopters. We had 2 helicopters that were up, and we had snipers in them. So if they had an opportunity to take a shot, then we wanted them to take that shot. We wanted to neutralize that threat. And Chief, is there anything that you'd like to say, or you want to take questions?
Take questions.
Okay. Right now, like I said, this information is very, very preliminary. And if you have questions, just ask who you'd like that question directed to, and we'll try to answer it.
Alex, the spokesman review. This is just for the fire personnel. Are you able to share anything about these firefighters? If they, anything about them at all, and their identities, what the fire department is doing right now to assist the rest of their brothers who lost these guys, or is there anything at all you can give us?
We are not going to name the firefighters at this time, and there was a procession from Kootenai Health to the Spokane Coroner's office, but their families will need support.
Aiden Brown, Current 2 News. You mentioned 3 firefighters that had been shot. Was there any other first responders or personnel that were injured during this operation?
No. As of right now, those are the only 3 that we have. We believe that everybody is off the mountain, so any civilians that were hiking during that time, we believe it's likely, had they been injured, they would have came forward. So.
There was a belief at some point that there could potentially have been a second shooter. I know that you're still early, but you have been able to essentially eliminate that thought process?
Yeah, we believe, based on the information that we've been able to collect, that we believe that there was only one shooter. And we based it on the weapons that we found at the scene, the type of injuries that were incurred by that weapon. So as of right now, from a very preliminary determination, we believe that there was only the one shooter.
And I know it's early, but do we have any sort of background on this person?
No.
Or any motive?
Nope. Black shirt.
Aaron from Range Media. Do we know if the person, you just said we don't have any background on, do we know if he's possibly like from here or did he move here and you don't know the identity?
We need to wait until a positive identification is made. So the gentleman
did the suspect shoot himself? Do we know that?
We don't know at this point in time. So the coroner's office will conduct their investigation, and so as of right now, we don't know.
Eliza Billingham, Spokane Public Radio. Are you able to give any insight on if you think there was a connection between the fire and the shooter?
We do believe that the suspect started the fire, and we do believe that it was an ambush, and it was intentional. And we do believe that he started it, and it was totally intentional what he did. In the back there in the tan.
Did he make the 911 call?
There was a gentleman that made the 911 call. He did not identify himself as the shooter. So as of right now, we don't believe that he's the one that made the 911 call. But, that could change because many times people don't use their real names and what have you. So.
Any description of the suspect?
No, not at this time, no. Gentleman in the red hat.
Brian Neal with KXOY. Does the fire present any problems with you as you're trying to collect evidence?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we scooped up that body, and as far as the preservation of the scene, it's not perfect in this particular situation, but it's something that had to be done. So you have to evaluate each particular circumstance, and at this time, we felt like since the fire was approaching, we needed to scoop up that body, and it's contained, so there are law enforcement personnel that are up there, and we will conduct the investigation, continue it tomorrow morning. Crews will be there all night. It's compromised, sure, but we had to do what we had to do to preserve the body. So,
what was the weapon?
We're not. Like I said, we don't know if there's more weapons up there that he had. There is a belief that he ran and shot. So we don't know what we might be collecting once the fire threat diminishes. The gentleman in the black shirt.
Are other federal agencies still involved?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We on a large operation like this, if we had to fuel helicopters, and there are some helicopters that had some really good technology that were able to pinpoint where that cell phone activity was. So there was our federal partners assisted us in this situation. 100% they did.
What location were we dealing with? Did you find the suspect?
Not too far from the original call for service. Yeah. Not too far. Anybody I haven't called on? All right, gentleman in the black shirt.
You said you picked up the cell phone signal around 3:16, I think?
Yes.
How long was it between that signal that you got and you were able to recover the body?
It's about an hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe around 5-ish.
Right.
So you just say there was a gun found, a weapon, correct?
Correct.
What kind was that?
We're not releasing that right now, just because we had to scoop everything up so quickly. We could not preserve the scene like traditionally we would like to. So we believe that there's a likelihood that when we are able to enter the scene again tomorrow without the threat of fire, that we'll find other weapons that were placed. So this was a total ambush. These firefighters did not have a chance.
Sheriff Garrett, with the spokesman review, can you just describe the terrain and how difficult it was, or maybe how simple it was to access that area?
When you have an environment where you don't know where the bullets are coming from because of the trees and the shrubbery and what have you, it is daunting for police officers, let alone firefighters who are there just to put out the fire. So it's very, very difficult. Very difficult for drones or helicopters to see any individuals up there. So this was a total ambush, taken by surprise, and yeah, it's unfortunate. So.
Sheriff, firefighters deal with ambush. I mean, police deal with ambush all the time, but firefighters, are they trained in that type of situation?
No, this is something that we don't train for. It's not something we expect. It's not something our firefighters should have to deal with. In this situation, they were called to a grass fire, which is already something that we're very heightened and are anxious about this time of year. And they were doing everything the way that they were supposed to do it.
Can we get an update on the fire? Do you have any sort of acreage or containment information?
It's about 20 acres, but unfortunately, we weren't able to put any resources on it because of the gunfire exchange. So, ma'am in the white there.
Sheriff Torres, reading with Crime 2, this is the week of 4th of July. First responders are already on defense with, this coming week. Just emotionally tell me how it feels to have something happen like this, especially with, such important authorities that are super important for a week like this too.
Yeah, I haven't, it hasn't sunk in yet. I mean, this is a situation where I don't even think a lot of us in this room has processed this. So, yeah, this community supports firefighters and law enforcement.
Any structures lost?
No, not at this time, no.
Is there any specific information about the actual location of where the shooter was at? Like, is there I don't want to say an address, but maybe coordinates or anything like that?
We might be able to get that for you later, but I don't have that information now.
I'll call
you. Yeah. I would like to say something. There was some information that was broadcasted on social media, and it's very, very important. These firefighters or police officers, in some cases, have family, and for some of this information to have been broadcasted, I hope we can ask with our social media and our First Amendment auditors and our civilian journalists to take in consideration what you're putting out there on the social media, because it can be devastating it's devastating when somebody knocks at your door to tell you something like this, but to hear about it on social media, I'm just asking for people to be considerate in the most significant of injuries and times. So, yeah.
Federal apparatus, I'm wondering what the White House has committed to, and the FBI and Homeland Security.
We had helicopters and personnel on the ground probably within the hour.
Also, in follow-up to that, this is obviously going to hit our community incredibly hard. It already has. I know, again, it's early. What can we do for the families? Will there be a memorial fund set up? Will there be some sort of way that we can, as a community, come together to support them? Because this is a devastating loss, and people want to put that emotion somewhere.
Yeah, we're grieving as an organization, and I can speak for Coeur d'Alene Fire as well. So a lot of those steps have not been completely brought to fruition, especially with it being a weekend. We know that the Red and Blue Foundation and Anchored Coffee has already offered to do a lot of the donation collection, and we appreciate them. They've been a great supporter of law enforcement and fire, and they'll continue to be a good partner for us. So that's where I would initially encourage people to seek to provide some support for the families.
Can you say what
I'd like to add,
is doing?
until a press release comes out by these two agencies, do not give money to a entity that says they're representing these people. They will put out a press release with the information, whether it's going to be an account at a bank or an account at another entity, but we will likely have some people that will try to scam based on this tragedy. So do not give money to any entity until a press release is released. Is that's fair to say?
Absolutely.
On where exactly to give this money.
Can you say, sorry, what you're doing for your firefighters right now? Just because I know that this is
I would say it's very early on. They're just processing this right now. So I mean, they're in shock. So is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say let's give it a day or two, and
we have mobilized peer support groups from all over the region for our people, and so that is something that we've already put into place. But like Sheriff has said, we don't know exactly all the extent of what we're going to need to do for our people just yet.
I did get information that some Black Hawk helicopters were also committed in the event that we needed to go.
The Idaho National Guard was prepared to provide a Black Hawk should we need one.
So, let's go here.
To your knowledge, is there any special significance to either June 29th or to the mountain that has happened?
No. Nope.
Is there any information you have on when the firefighters were shot at to begin with? Was it when they were actively fighting, or was it?
Well,
when they first arrived?
at approximately 1,400 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a potential for this situation to shift policy or add policies to the fire department in any way? I know you guys are really early.
As a rule, what's predictable is preventable. In this situation, I'm just not sure how it could have possibly been predicted. So it's really hard to policy that out, but we will be doing a complete review.
You can anticipate or expect some of these things to occur in a urban setting. You can. I've seen it myself. However, in a rural setting, this is very, very, very rare in a rural setting. I mean, I've never seen it. Seen it many times in an urban setting. I have not seen it in a rural setting. Yes, sir. Well, you got the last question. Lucky you.
How involved were the firefighters in battling this blaze when they arrived there? Was it pretty immediate that these shots rang out, or were they dousing it with water?
Do you know what time they arrived on scene?
My understanding is that they were doing a reconnaissance on the fire initially, and that there actually was not any active firefighting at that point. So it was right early on in the incident.
And there was only one fire. I know that there was misinformation out there that there were multiple fires started, but there was just the one fire.
Correct.
Okay.
For the Kootenai County Fire Rescue, can you spell your name for me? I'm so sorry.
My last name is Holley, Holley.
The Idaho State Police is handling the officer-involved shooting aspect of this investigation. And I'll if you have any questions to them, or our commissioner, the chairman of the board, Bruce Matari, we can, or if you'd like to say anything. Okay.
I'll say something here because there's.
My name's Bruce Matari.
I am the chairman of the Board of the County Commissioners in Kootenai County. First, I want to extend my most sincerest condolences to the loved ones of the firemen we lost today, and give my prayers to those injured and fighting for their lives. What happened was senseless and tragic beyond words. I also want to highlight the incredible rapid response from Sheriff Norris and his office, and how they rallied quickly with surrounding law enforcement agencies at the local, state, and federal level, and that includes outside the state in Washington. They quickly contained the suspect and prevented him from further harm to others. The response was phenomenal. June 29, 2025 is a day that we will not forget in this community. It is the day evil showed its face, and we lost two outstanding professionals of the highest quality. And I cannot fathom why anyone would commit such a heinous act. This kind of senseless violence is unheard of here, as the sheriff had mentioned. This is not who we are as a community. And when you hear how others portray the people who live here on the news, it's not true. What happened here decades ago is not reflective of the fine people who live here today. And I want everyone to know that this is a wonderful place to live, to raise your family, and visit. It is a place that is comprised of caring and considerate people who look out for each other. And we, this community, will look out for those who are grieving from this tragic loss of their loved ones today. And I ask that the people watching allow time for this community to heal from this unbelievable loss. And that I also want to thank the fact that, the resources are here and that they've been made available at the state level to support our local law enforcement and even at the federal level. It was an outstanding response, and Sheriff Norris and his office deserve all the credit for that. So, thank you.
You look like you have one more question. All right.
You said Washington and Idaho, of course, responded, but I thought I saw mutual aid license plates from Montana. Can you comment at all about if Montana delivered any mutual aid?
I believe Montana was on scene also, yes. Okay.
Sorry, just real quick. Are there any evacuations planned for the fire?
At this time, no. But I encourage you, if you haven't signed up for Kootenai Alerts, to make sure that we sign up for Kootenai Alerts. And that is the best way. We did send out an alert for people to shelter in place at this time if you're in that impacted area. So Kootenai Alerts is a great way to stay informed. Okay, thank you.
You were just watching a press conference from Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris updating the public on the situation that unfolded on Canfield Mountain earlier this afternoon. We learned a few things via that press conference. The sheriff confirming they do believe they have found the shooter. That person was located. They were deceased, they said, with a firearm nearby. They said that person was found not far from where the shooting took place. We also learned a bit more about the victims in this case. The sheriff saying there was one Coeur d'Alene firefighter who was deceased and one Kootenai County Fire and Rescue firefighter who was killed, and a third firefighter, a Coeur d'Alene firefighter, the sheriff said just came out of surgery but is stable, he said. The sheriff telling us as well today that at around 3:16 they were able to use a cell phone signal coming from the mountain they located in that area, and that's how they were able to locate the gunman. By the time they did so, he mentioned they already appeared to be dead. He said there were more than 300 law enforcement officers who responded to this situation. They even heard, he said, from the White House, from federal authorities saying they would provide anything they could if they needed it. In terms of the suspect, they didn't release anything about that person's identity. In fact, he said because there was a wildfire burning, they had to actually scoop the deceased suspect up and remove them from where they were found because there was a firefighter approaching. We didn't learn anything about a firearm used in that as well, or a potential motive. Authorities were asked about how quickly the firefighters were ambushed based upon the time they arrived and the time they were shot. And we had heard from officials that it's their belief those firefighters were just doing initial reconnaissance on the fire to kind of get their bearings and to see where it was burning when the shooting took place. So they hadn't even begun to fight the fire before they were shot and killed today. But again, one Coeur d'Alene firefighter shot and killed today. One Kootenai County fire and rescue firefighter shot and killed today. One other Coeur d'Alene firefighter shot, taken to surgery. They told fighting for his life, but stable. All right, we will continue our coverage over on KSKN 22 coming up at the top of the hour. Hope to see you then. Well, tonight we are joining you from a special KREM 2 News report after 2 firefighters were shot and killed in an ambush as they went to fight a fire on Canfield Mountain near Coeur d'Alene earlier today. Well, earlier tonight, the Department of Transportation cameras captured a scene, a procession of law enforcement and firefighters escorting the 2 deceased firefighters from Coeur d'Alene to the Spokane County Medical Examiner's office. I can tell you several other agencies lined the overpass as well as just normal citizens to pay their respect to their fallen brothers. Earlier in the day, we heard from Sheriff Bob Norris about what happened.
So at approximately 1:21 p.m. this afternoon, we received reports of a fire on the east side of Canfield Mountain. Fire assets responded to the scene, and at approximately 2 p.m. this afternoon, it was reported that firefighters were receiving shots fired at them. We now have 2 deaths. We have an unknown amount of casualties. We still have civilians that are coming off of that mountain. We might have civilians that are stuck or in shock on that mountain. So this is a very, very fresh situation.
County Sheriff's Office at 7:40 tonight. In a press release, they wrote this evening, members of the SWAT team located a deceased male on Canfield Mountain. A firearm was found nearby, and they just held a press conference that just wrapped up moments ago. It got underway at 9:30, where we learned a bit more about this situation. They said they have found one dead shooter, they said. They said a cell phone signal brought them to that area where they observed what they believed to be a male with what appeared to be a firearm by them. That person turned out to be deceased. They believe that was the shooter. We also learned that one Coeur d'Alene firefighter was shot and killed, and one Kootenai County fire and rescue firefighter was shot and killed. Another firefighter from Coeur d'Alene, they were shot, taken to surgery. The sheriff said he was fighting for his life, but listed as stable tonight. They do not believe there's any further threat to the public tonight. Want to get to our Caitlin Galloway. She is at Kootenai Health tonight. That's where the victims were initially taken, and that's where the procession began tonight to take the fallen firefighters from Coeur d'Alene to Spokane. Caitlin?
Well, that's right, Mark. The parking lot here in front of Kootenai Health is pretty empty at this hour. I checked inside the emergency department. There are no memorials or anything like that inside the hospital itself. But like you said earlier, there were a lot of people that came out to show their support with the procession, and a lot of people came out on those overpasses. They were waving American flags. People were honking horns in support as they drove by. I also spoke with a hospital employee just about a half an hour ago who didn't want to speak on camera, but did tell me privately that they did an honor walk through the ER when those firefighters were brought in. And it wasn't just the ER that normally takes part in those honor walks. It was all departments of the hospital that came together for that honor walk to honor those deceased firefighters. And he said the community is really, really upset to see something like this happen. And they were also really shocked. Some of the people who came out in support along the overpass that I talked to said this is a safe place to live that they love, that's very neighborly and community focused, and that all was really shattered for them with this incident earlier today.
Well, I'm a Coeur d'Alene, Idaho native, so these are our neighbors and our sons and our brothers and our friends. And they put their lives on the line every day for us. And for them to come and try to put out a fire and get shot in Idaho, that doesn't happen up here.
That same woman also told me that even though obviously a devastating night for this community, she's not surprised at the amount of people that turned up to show their support, especially on that overpass before those vehicles joined the procession. She said this is how she was raised. That's what this community does. They show up for one another, especially in times of tragedy. Mark, back to you.
Caitlin Galloway live tonight. Caitlin, thank you very much. We want to head out now to our Regan Gallo. She's been at the scene all day long today. She was at the command center for several hours. And Regan, you were just in the press conference update. What can you tell us?
A lot is going on from that press conference that we just got out of, and we learned from Sheriff Norris and Kootenai County Sheriff's Office that around 300 law enforcement officers altogether were on scene today, starting at around 1:30 in the afternoon through this evening. And we do have some other news on the suspect, and that suspect, who is believed to be a male, is now deceased. And when they found that body, they said that a firearm was nearby, but they are not giving details on what kind of firearm at this point that person had. So that is believed to be the only suspect. We thought there might be multiple suspects, multiple shooters. Right now it is believed to be only one, and now that there is no threat to the area, to the community, to the park, and that they neutralized that threat. So that is something that we can confirm to. And then just some other things, and to be transparent, I'm looking at my notes, just got out of that press conference just moments ago, and again, this is preliminary information, still subject to change, still many updates to come as this is still an active investigation. But let's talk about the fire. So the fire is still burning. Unfortunately, when they were trying to track down that suspect, they were unable to do anything about the fire. It's about a 17,000 foot area, and as of right now, the community is not on shelter in place, or not on evacuation, for the fire, but authorities are saying to be prepared at least to leave the area if anything gets worse with that fire. So they are currently mitigating that right now. But a lot to work through, a lot of support on scene today through multiple different agencies, and really hard terrain, complex terrain in a hot area too. So as right now, no threat to the community. The suspect is believed to be deceased, and we're gonna still be on top of this as we learn more details through the next coming days.
All right, Regan Gallo live tonight. Thank you, Regan. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that just a bit more. The sheriff tonight, Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris, saying this was a total ambush. These firefighters didn't have a chance. They believe the suspect started the fire intentionally to ambush the firefighters. That's what they believe at this hour. Of course, we don't know why at this point. The firefighters who were killed, one was from the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department, the other from the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. A third firefighter was also injured. That person just came out of surgery, according to the update we just received, but is listed as stable. This whole chaotic situation elicited a large response. It drew national attention, including from some of our highest levels of federal law enforcement and several lawmakers. They took to social media to address what was unfolding.
The deadly ambush of firefighters and the effort to find their killer captured the attention of the nation's top law enforcement officials this evening. Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, took to X, writing, FBI assets are currently on scene providing support. It remains an active and very dangerous scene. Attorney General Pam Bondi also weighed in. Thank you to our incredible FBI agents on the ground assisting local authorities in Idaho, she wrote. We are all praying for you. And ATF's Seattle account posting, special agents and certified fire investigators from the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle offices are responding to the scene in Coeur d'Alene to provide support. Idaho Governor Brad Little calling the ambush a heinous direct assault on our brave firefighters and asking Idahoans pray for them and their families. Senator Mike Crapo took to X to say he is monitoring the horrific events while urging people to follow recommendations of law enforcement. And Senator Jim Risch calling the ambush a villainous attack on the people who dedicate their lives to protecting and serving our communities, saying the attack is despicable and not Idaho.
I want to bring in our chief meteorologist, Jeremy the Goo, right now, because aside from all the law enforcement activity, there was also this wildfire that crews just weren't able to fight for several hours today while they searched for this suspect. Jeremy, we learned today the fire was on the east side of Canfield Mountain, correct?
Yeah, it is what Sheriff Bob Norris said. He also said the fire grew to about 20 acres in size. Now, a bit of good news that he did relay there in that press conference. I heard him say crews are working on containment. Containment just means if they can get a line around that fire where that fire will not be able to spread outside of those lines. It does not mean that the fire itself is out. So we still saw smoke when we could last see. Our shot where we were able to look at that and see the wildfire smoke, we no longer have access to because it has gotten a little too dark to see it. But as you can see, the fire itself burning right in an area where it could easily spread up into the mountains if we saw any sort of wind in the coming days. I looked into some of that wind possibility, and it does look like we do not wind up seeing the wind. This is region wide, but here's how it goes. Today or tomorrow, 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tuesday, 10 to 15 miles per hour. By Wednesday, 20 to 30 miles per hour. So things do start to get a bit windier on Wednesday, all thanks to an atmospheric pattern. Right now, we're under a ridge of high pressure. That ridge of high pressure is building. So we're heading into a window here the next couple of days where as this ridge slides over the top of us, we wind up with the calmest possible conditions. Not only calm, though, but hot. We are going to be exceptionally hot and exceptionally dry the next 3 days. There are always three things we look for in wildfires. One is heat, one is humidity or the lack thereof, and the other is wind. Wind will spread a fire. If you're hot and dry, that fire has the ability to burn more intensely and hotter, and then everything around it has the ability to spread. And unfortunately, the next 3 days we have those conditions. 93 degrees tomorrow, likely 96 on Tuesday, 91 degrees on Wednesday. It is hot enough that we've issued weather impact alerts. We have heat advisories in effect across much of the inland Northwest for just how warm it will be these next few days. Not just warm, but extremely dry across most of the inland Northwest. So, Mark, good news is they're getting a jump on it. Better news is there's no wind. The bad news is we are just going to be exceptionally hot these next few days.
All right, Jeremy, appreciate the perspective. Thank you very much. If you are just tuning in, we want to recap kind of where we are at. There was a horrific, chaotic scene that unfolded just northeast of Coeur d'Alene today on Canfield Mountain. A fire was called in at 1:21 this afternoon. Responding firefighters shortly after they arrived, and according to the sheriff, doing reconnaissance on that fire, they were ambushed, shot and killed by a gunman. That elicited a huge law enforcement response. Some 300 officers from all surrounding agencies, even other states, Washington, responded, federal officers as well, to try to search for this person. They said that tonight at around 7:40, they located that person's body, a deceased male. They found a firearm laying nearby. They don't know if that person died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound or not. We don't know why this person ambushed the firefighters, but that's what the sheriff called it today, an ambush. He said these firefighters had no chance. So we have one deceased Coeur d'Alene firefighter tonight, one deceased Kootenai County Fire and Rescue firefighter tonight. Another Coeur d'Alene firefighter was also shot, but now out of surgery and, according to the sheriff, fighting for his life but stable tonight. We don't know anything about the gunman. That person has not been identified yet, nor do we know about the weapon they used. The sheriff saying there could be more weapons up there they haven't been able to recover yet. They said the fire was moving in, so they had to essentially scoop up the deceased gunmen and remove them or take them away from the approaching fire. So they hope to get up there in the coming days to continue to investigate. Our Regan Gallo has been live at the scene all afternoon long tonight. She was at the press conference at 9:30 with Sheriff Bob Norris. And Regan, what can you tell us about that press conference?
Yeah. Yeah, one other thing that I think is really important is that the sheriff said that there was a cell phone activation on the scene around 3:15, 3:30 in the afternoon. However, when media asked, did the suspect allegedly call 911 themselves, and they said no at this point. So we don't know who exactly called 911. There was maybe speculation that the suspect did themselves, but as of right now, that is not the case, or they don't believe so. However, there still was a cell phone activation up on the mountain at that time. So that is one interesting point. And let me also talk about the fire, because one thing that is really important is, as this is an active investigation, this exacerbates, the scene, because the fire is burning. And so it really complicates things as the area is still trying to be contained. Evidence, the deceased body had to be taken off as soon as possible because of the active fire. So that's one other complexity to this whole investigation, is that what might be here today might not be tomorrow. So there's all those different levels and layers that authorities are having to work around.
Yeah, that's a good point right there, Regan, as well. Thank you very much. Hang tight. We'll come back to you a bit later in the newscast. To recap tonight, one suspected gunman believed to be dead, 2 firefighters dead tonight, another injured, and really a community just stunned. We're going to take a quick break and be right back with more after this. Ambushed, shot, and killed while responding to a grass fire earlier this afternoon. 2 firefighters, one from Coeur d'Alene, the other from Kootenai Fire and Rescue, are dead tonight. A 3rd firefighter injured, just out of surgery. They were also shot. The sheriff in the last hour and a half or so, or rather an hour, updating us saying they have 1 dead shooter. They believe the person responsible was found dead. We understand we do have a portion of the press conference that Sheriff Bob Norris, the Kootenai County Sheriff, just held at 9:30 tonight. Let's take a listen into that.
We believe that there's a likelihood that when we are able to enter the scene again tomorrow without the threat of fire, that we'll find other weapons that were placed. So this was a total ambush. These firefighters did not have a chance.
That was Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris you just heard from, again, calling it a total ambush. Here's the timeline. The call for that fire came in at 1:21. The sheriff tonight saying he believes it was the gunman who called in the fire with the intention of ambushing the firefighters. At around 2 o'clock or so, they said the call over the radio came out that the firefighters had been shot. We tried to get a better idea on kind of timing of this, and the way he described it, or the firefighters there described it, was that the firefighters had arrived on scene. They were doing what they called reconnaissance when they were ambushed. That's when this whole ordeal began. It elicited a huge law enforcement response. Tonight, we learned roughly 300 law enforcement personnel from all across the region, even federal agents descending on the scene. to try to find this gunman. At one point, they didn't know if they were looking for multiple gunmen or just one. Tonight, we learned it was just one gunman. We also learned tonight it was a cell phone signal they received or were able to track at around 3:15 today. And with that signal, it took them about 90 minutes, they said, before they SWAT members located what they believed to be that deceased gunman on the ground with a gun found nearby them. We don't know anything about the gunman tonight. Police aren't releasing any of that information. We don't know their identity, a potential motive. We don't know anything about the gun that person allegedly used in this. But tonight, the sheriff's saying they do not believe there's any further threat to the public in this situation. A lot more will come out about this in the coming days and weeks. We hope to learn more about this investigation. Here's a map right now of where this unfolded, if you're not familiar. So that's Coeur d'Alene on the bottom of your screen, Canfield Mountain, just northeast of Coeur d'Alene. Right there. That's where this whole situation unfolded. It took several hours today for this situation to be resolved. We want to bring in now our chief meteorologist, Jeremy Legoo, to talk about the area. Jeremy, now that the law enforcement situation is resolved, firefighters can then get in there and hopefully put out this fire they were not able to fight for a long time today.
Yeah, it is really going to help to be able to get in there in the next couple of days. Fire burning just outside of Hayden and Coeur d'Alene to the east of most of the population there. That's a big deal because as we move through the next couple of days, we're heading into a weather pattern that favors more calm conditions across the region. A ridge of high pressure building in and very dry air means that we might not get any relief from that fire in terms of moisture or rain, but we aren't going to see any wind. Unfortunately, it comes with a lot of heat. Heat advisories are in place Monday and Tuesday for most of the inland northwest for high temperatures ranging between 93 and 104 degrees. That stretches from the Cascades all the way through North Idaho, down into the Lewis and Clark Valley and across much of Oregon. We are headed into a very hot, very dry stretch of weather. There's little relief in the forecast right now. It's starting to look like we'll see temperatures in the 90s the next few days before wind picks up on Wednesday. So it'll be critical for crews to get on that fire Monday and Tuesday before we see wind pick up on Wednesday.
Well, it was a busy championship Sunday at the 35th anniversary of Hoop Fest. We begin in the men's elite division where Team Hub Northwest was vying for a 7th straight Hoop Fest championship. And despite Parker Kelly and Mike Hart not being at 100%, big man Rob Lipman was able to shoulder the load, bringing home MVP honors as Hub Northwest won a 7th straight men's elite title by defeating Jet Juice in the championship game. In the women's elite division, there was no resistance to another championship for Team Empire Fitness, made up of Gonzaga assistant coach Jasmine Redmond, former Zags Shannon Reeder and Jesse Loetta, and former professional Sierra Andrews. It's back-to-back MVP trophies for Redmond.
I've been able to play with this group of girls in different aspects of my life, so coming together and just playing is a lot of fun. A lot of us went to the same school. We were able to play together prior to this, so just getting back and having that chemistry is a big deal.
In the dunk contest, 3-time champion Tyler Cronk was looking for a 4th straight dunk contest title, but he was dethroned today by young Isaac Fisher, a dunk contest veteran who stood out above the group and was able to take down Cronk to win his first dunk contest.
Oh, it feels good. Just all that hard work you've been putting in, all those failures, those losses I've been taking, the 3rd place. To finally win it in front of my family and this crowd is just an amazing feeling. No feeling like it.
And in the Toyota shootout today, there was a winner. His name was David Borovets from Auburn, Washington, who took home a new 2025 Toyota Tacoma. Here's some sound from David after the big win.
I was really nervous, obviously, but then I was like, if I make it, it'll be fun. If I don't, I don't. So once I got to the line and I just let it go, I made sure to give enough power, and it felt really, really good. And it was cool to watch the ball go in, and I was like, sweet.
Oh, and look at that. He finishes off with the water bath. Big congrats to him. That was a sweet truck this year,
I'd
Mark.
love to see that. I saw some guys making the attempt. It's a long shot.
It is, yeah.
I mean, beyond half court, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. And,
okay.
But, I mean, if you're going for a truck, you got to make it work.
I know.
Like
Could you imagine winning a truck?
Yeah.
Dude.
And big congrats to Coach Hanrahan, consolation bracket champion.
That's right. Yeah, the winners are the losers today for my
Beautiful.
kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll take that.
Team Swiss cheese. One thing I've never won in my life, by the way, a dunk contest. All right.
I'm not surprised.
Thank you very much. All right, let's get back to our chief meteorologist, Jeremy Lagu, to talk about the hot week ahead. Jeremy?
Mark, we are under weather impact alerts starting tomorrow across much of the inland Northwest. They run Monday through Wednesday for a different reason just about each and every day. So let's start chronologically. Heat alerts or heat advisories are in effect from basically the Cascades through North Idaho down into Oregon. High temperatures will range between 93 and 104 degrees in the coming days. That's hot no matter who you are. By the time we get to Wednesday, we are going to eventually start to see a pattern change. Tomorrow, 90s just about everywhere. It is going to be a scorcher of a day. 101 in Richland, 99 in Lewiston. As we move from Monday into Tuesday, it stays every bit as hot, if not hotter. I think Tuesday winds up our hottest day of the entire week. Notice Wednesday still in the 90s, but starting to cool. That pattern change that hits us on Wednesday is interesting to me as a meteorologist. We are going to eventually start to get rid of it. There's Tuesday's heat, and as we move through the next couple of days, we will wind up seeing a more zonal pattern. But by now, average is pretty dry. We'll stay above normal in terms of temperatures the next few days, but as we get to Wednesday, wind will likely pick up across the region. So despite a light cool down in terms of temperatures, we stay breezy, and that will equate to an increased fire danger. So Monday, Tuesday, sunny and hot. Wednesday, sunny, hot, and windy before we get a beautiful 4th of July on Friday. We'll be right back.
Welcome back as we continue to cover our breaking news, rounding out the broadcast tonight. In the last hour, we have learned more about what unfolded near Canfield Mountain in Coeur d'Alene today. Essentially, the sheriff saying it was an ambush of firefighters. They believe the gunman intentionally started a fire at around 1:20 this afternoon, and when firefighters arrived, he opened fire on them. We learned today from the sheriff one Coeur d'Alene firefighter was killed. Another firefighter from Kootenai County Fire and Rescue was killed. A third firefighter was also injured. They were from the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department, according to the sheriff. He said that person just came out of surgery but is stable. Here's a map of where it all unfolded, just northeast of Coeur d'Alene on Canfield Mountain. The fire the gunman, they say, started, that continues to burn tonight. Crews were not able to get to it while they searched for the gunman. A cell signal pointed them in the right direction, that signal coming in at around 3:15. They used that signal, and 90 minutes later, we were told, they located what they believed to be the gunman, a deceased male with a firearm by their side. The sheriff saying they believe that person was the gunman. Here's video of the procession. Law enforcement and firefighters, all those vehicles taking the two deceased firefighters from Kootenai Health in Coeur d'Alene west on I-90 to the Spokane County Medical Examiner's office tonight. So we have learned a lot more about this situation. We'll have much more coming up on KREM 2 News at 11 over on Channel 2.